The 2022 Jaguars regular season is right around the corner. I figured this was an incredible time to go ahead and come on, do a quick full season breakdown, and then also do a record prediction before everything kicks off. BetUS has the over-under Jaguars win total at 6.5 games, and I feel like that is almost spot on to how a lot of Jaguar fans feel, whether you're on the side of the fence that really can believe in they're in 5 to 6 win territory, and then you've got a bunch of optimistic fans that really do think they're going to turn this around quickly and hit that 7 to 8 win mark. Week 1 of the Jaguars regular season comes in Washington, D.C. against the now Washington Commanders. They've settled on a name, and they've also tried to find their new quarterback. They have traded for Carson Wentz this year. He is going to be their quarterback going ahead in 2022, and Carson Wentz has just struggled against the Jaguars. Obviously, he held his own up in Indianapolis, but we know how the Week 18 game went in Jacksonville. Obviously, new team, but I do have him struggling once again. You look at a whole of the Commanders' offensive weapons. You got Terry McLaurin, you have Jahan Dotson, we're not sure what he's going to be, and then obviously you have Antonio Gibson. The Jaguars' front seven against the run is looking pretty stout, and then on top of that, you have the development of Tyson Campbell, who should be able to take care of Terry McLaurin. That kind of opens the door for Jahan Dotson a little bit, but at the same time, we do have Shaq Griffin. I think he's going to be able to take care of business. And then on top of the defense, Commanders' defense not having Chase Young, one of the best pass rushers in the league, I think the Jaguars' offensive line will be able to keep up. Will be able to keep Trevor Lawrence upright and keep that jersey nice and clean. I could see this game kind of going either way. Really, just two big momentum swings in this game could be all that it takes. And ultimately, I do have the Jaguars walking away with the Week 1 victory, and they're coming into the home opener against the Indianapolis Colts. Now, Week 2 against the Indianapolis Colts, I think just point-blank end of period, the Indianapolis Colts cannot win in Jacksonville. I think, Jim Irsay is going to continue to cry. These clowns are going to continue to haunt his dreams. And I think the Jaguars really do have a huge opportunity to ride the momentum of the Week 1 win into the home opener, and also just they have the Colts at home. I think it's going to be a perfect storm. They're going to be incredibly good. They're going to have an incredible wave of momentum off of Week 1, and they're also going to be rolling into the streak where the Colts cannot win in Jacksonville. So I think the fact that the Jaguars beefed up the run 7, like I mentioned, against the Commanders, that's going to have a huge impact on Jonathan Taylor. And I really do think they're going to be able to kind of stifle the Colts rushing attack and total Colts offense. Again, I think Matt Ryan kind of goes the same way of the previous, I feel like 1,000 Colts, like old-timer tryouts here. We're on our third one now. Phillip Rivers to Carson Wentz, now to Matt Ryan. They're going to get it right eventually. You keep throwing enough darts to the wall, one of them's going to hit. So, and at the end of the day, I do think Yannick Ngakoue, who is now an Indianapolis Colt, is probably going to get to Trevor Lawrence once in his return to Jacksonville. I think that's a perfect storm going on an individual level there for Yannick Ngakoue. But I do think the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to walk away with the victory here, and they're going to be 2-0 heading into their Week 3 matchup against the Los Angeles Chargers out in LA. Okay, Week 3 against the Los Angeles Chargers. Ultimately, I think this is a perfect storm against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Not only do they play very poorly on the West Coast, they also play very poorly historically against great young quarterbacks, and that is exactly what the Jaguars are going to be up against. A long trip out to LA, and then also playing against someone that is probably a top 3 young quarterback in the league in Justin Herbert. And on top of all of that, the Chargers have not only snagged Khalil Mack, they also got J.C. Jackson, and they added both of those guys to what is an incredibly formidable defense already. We think Joey Bosa, Derwin James just got paid. That's a lot of talent on the defensive side, and I don't think the Jaguars are going to have the offensive firepower to keep up with a Los Angeles Chargers offense that is going to be firing on all cylinders. And because I also don't think the Jaguars have the power on defense to limit Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Austin Eckler. There's a bunch of great talent on the Chargers offense as well. I'm hoping I'm wrong here, but the age-old saying goes, the Jaguars are bad until they aren't. And that especially rings true whenever they're taking trips out west at any time of the year. Now, Week 4 up in Philadelphia, that's a lot riding on this game. Obviously, it's Doug Pederson's return to Philadelphia, but at the same time, they're also going to want to finish out the quarter on a very strong note. You want to finish out in those first 4 games with a positive record. At worst, they're going to finish 500, but still, you want to roll into the second quarter of the season with a 3-1, with that plus 500 record going in. But I do think the Jaguars are going to continue their slide down back into reality as they travel up to Philadelphia. You talk about the additions the Jaguars are going to be facing. that the Eagles have made. You're talking about Jordan Davis, who they added in the draft. They traded for A.J. Brown. They traded for Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. I think the weapons they added all across this roster are just going to make it an incredibly difficult day for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Obviously, I talked about Jordan Davis, but then you're talking about Fletcher Cox and Hassan Reddick. Incredibly tough task for this Jaguars offensive line to go up against. Ultimately, I do have the Jaguars falling to the Philadelphia Eagles in Doug Pederson's revenge game and going into the second quarter of the Jaguars season 2-2. Now, the Jaguars come back home against the Houston Texans to start off the second quarter of the 2022 season. And while the Texans made some lackluster moves in free agency, they didn't do a whole lot there. They really did swing for the fences and added a bunch of great young talent to their roster. Both sides of the ball got considerable help. You're talking about Derek Stingley and Christian Harris on the defensive side. Then you have Dameon Pierce and Kenyon Green on the offensive side. There's a lot of young talent that they have and some great building blocks that they can really look forward to using. Ultimately, the Jaguars did struggle to contain Brandon Cooks in 2021, and I think that's going to be, once again, the story about Brandon Cooks, and the Jaguars just can't figure out how to stop Brandon. Ultimately, I do think he's going to have a good day, but as a team for the Texans, I don't think they're going to have a very good day. And thankfully, I do think this Jaguars offense is going to be able to keep up with whatever kind of fireworks show the Houston Texans can put on, if they can put on any sort of show. But I do think they're going to be able to get the win in Week 5 against the Houston Texans and get an early division win against the Houston Texans. Now, Week 6 is the second game against the Indianapolis Colts of the 2022 regular season. And just like the Jaguars beat the Colts consistently in Jacksonville, the Indianapolis Colts seem to consistently beat the Jaguars in Indianapolis. It's a very weird little trend that's going on. But I do think Matt Ryan and this Colts offense and this Colts team is going to be firing on all cylinders as they look to avenge their previous 2 losses to this Jaguars team. And I do absolutely think they're going to win in rather convincing fashion. As sad as that is to say, I think Michael Pittman and Jonathan Taylor are both going to have a good game in this matchup, the second matchup of the year. Unfortunately, I just think the Jaguars are going to roll out of Indianapolis 3-3, still 500 on the year, and they're going to look to the New York Giants in Week 7. Now, for Week 7 against the New York Giants, I think the Jags and the Giants are very, very similar offensively on paper. You have 2 quarterbacks that are still young, then you have offensive lines that kind of have something to prove a little bit about themselves, and then you have their weapons on the offense that both also need to make some standout. Whether you're talking about Kadarius Toney, or maybe you're talking about Zay Jones, maybe you're talking about the return of Saquon Barkley, or maybe Travis Etienne. A lot of little things are going on with these offenses, and we'll kind of know who they are by Week 7 of the regular season. But with Saquon and his injury history up in the air, I know, because he's had some really weird injuries happening in his career. Ultimately, Kenny Golladay and Kadarius Toney could be the best option with at best as an iffy passer, because I think it's going to be a very long day for the Giants offense if Saquon can't get it going early against a Jaguars front 7 that is expected to be much better this year. Ultimately, I think the battle comes down to the battle of the quarterbacks. When you're looking at Trevor Lawrence and Daniel Jones, I think Trevor Lawrence actually absolutely has the opportunity to just run laps around Danny Dimes at home against the New York Giants, moving the Jaguars to 4-3, heading into Week 8 in London against the Denver Broncos. Now, out in London, the Jaguars have played well in London. They rarely faced an opponent, though, as fierce as the Denver Broncos are. You're talking about a team that's kind of a sleeper to be a Super Bowl pick with the amount of talent they have on offense. Obviously, they have Russell Wilson. They have just an immense amount of wide receiving talent. And then on top of that, they have Javonte Williams, a great running back in the backfield. It's going to be an incredibly challenging day for this Jaguars defense. And unless the Jaguars can just pull some London magic or kind of, pull out a fluke win like they did in the Bills game in 2021, I don't see the Jaguars coming away with this game. And ultimately, they finish another quarter of the year, and they finish at the halfway mark at 4-4, heading into a Week 9 matchup against the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, Week 9 against the Las Vegas Raiders is a game that has a lot of similarities to the Los Angeles Chargers game. They're loading up on talent in the offseason. Obviously, they signed Chandler Jones to a defensive line that already has Max Crosby on it. Incredibly strong defensive line. Then you add Devontae Adams to an offense that was incredibly strong last year, as the Raiders were a playoff team in 2021. Obviously, the Jaguars shut down the black hole in Oakland in 2019, with some Minshew magic and like other West Coast teams have done in the past, I do think they're going to make a strong trip out to Jacksonville. This game could turn into a toss-up, but at the end of the day, I think the proven talent on the Vegas Raiders team is going to just be the thing that tips this over the edge, and the Raiders are going to come away with the win. And the start of the third quarter of the 2022 regular season, and the Jaguars will be 4-5 going into a matchup at Arrowhead to face Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, Week 10 against the Kansas City Chiefs, you're looking at a Chiefs team that, yes, they've lost Tyreek Hill, but they still have the best quarterback in the game, Patrick Mahomes. You're talking about a team that still has the best tight end in the game, Travis Kelce. And hopefully by this point, we'll know if the Jaguars have fixed this issue that has plagued them for, I feel like, a decade. Will they be able to cover an elite tight end? Because it just doesn't seem like they've ever been able to solve this problem, and a tight end has always been the bone that is just really kind of gotten in the side of Jaguar fans, just not being able to slow down elite tight ends. Will Trevor Lawrence be able to contend in a shootout with one of the league's best offenses? I don't think they will. Ultimately, you're looking at a Jaguars offense that is incredibly unproven going up against an offense that has consistently carried a Kansas City Chiefs team to deep into the playoffs, whether it be a Super Bowl or just an AFC Championship game appearance. They're going to look to the bye week in Week 11 and hopefully stop this 3-game slide, right the ship, get back into the win column in Week 12. But they look to Week 11 as a chance to breathe, as they're still in the middle of a gauntlet run through some of the best teams in the National Football League. Hey, Week 11, can't lose on a bye. It's a great opportunity to rest up and, get ready for what could be still a potential playoff push, as they're sitting here 4-6, and they're kind of on the bottom of that graphic that's in the hunt. But hey, you're looking at Week 12, and you've got some decent teams that you could really scoop some wins up late in the year, ultimately, if they're going to be a contender to make the playoffs in 2022. Now, Week 12 against the Baltimore Ravens, the Jaguars are coming off of their bye week. They're sitting at 4-6, and they're facing former MVP Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson, there's a bunch of noise surrounding him. How long will he be able to be a good quarterback? Well, until that question gets answered, he's a guy that can not only beat you with his arm, he can also beat you with his legs. They have an incredible stable of running backs behind Lamar Jackson. And Mark Andrews is also one of the best tight ends in the National Football League. This offense is an incredibly talented offense. And just like I think the Chiefs offense is just going to be able to kind of overpower a Jaguars defense that has yet to really solidify itself as one that can compete against these elite offenses, the Jaguars are just going to have their hands full containing Lamar Jackson, containing Mark Andrews, and they're just such an athletic team on the offense. I think the Jaguars are going to absolutely have their hands full and fall to the Baltimore Ravens, get to 4-7, really struggling as this slide just continues to happen. And they'll look to the Detroit Lions in Week 13 to hopefully right their ship and get finally back into the win column. Looking at this Week 13 matchup against the Detroit Lions up in Detroit, I do think it's going to be a must-win game for this Jaguars team. You're looking at them losing 4 straight to some of the heavyweights in the AFC, the Chiefs, the Ravens, the Raiders. There's a bunch of powerhouse teams there. And while the Lions have made some quality additions on their offense, ultimately I think the Jaguars front seven is absolutely going to be able to affect Jared Goff. You're looking at a limited offense here, but what is DJ Chark going to look like? A lot of Jaguar fans are familiar with the injury history that DJ Chark carries. Is he going to be able to make it to Week 13? Jameson Williams, what is he going to look like coming back off the ACL? There's going to be a lot of questions surrounding this Lions offense, and I do think the Jaguars front seven is going to be able to be playing an impact in this game. I think this is a must-win game for the Jaguars if they don't want to end up talking about the draft here around this time, which those rumblings are probably already begun at this point. But it's a must-win for the Jaguars. They pull out the win, and after a Week 13 matchup in Detroit, they leave Detroit 5-7 to face the Tennessee Titans in Nashville. Now, unfortunately, the only streak that is probably longer than the Colts losing in Jacksonville is the Jaguars losing in Nashville. And I think that's just going to continue to ring true. You're going to be looking at Derrick Henry, who is just absolutely just turns it on late in the year, and he just becomes a powerhouse and a man among boys, it looks like, towards the later half of the season when defenses are just worn down, they're banged up, and Derrick Henry just keeps on coming. So Henry could potentially be their only offensive weapon. They've traded A.J. Brown. The unknown of Ryan Tannehill is still there. And then you have the unknown of Treylon Burks. Treylon Burks has appeared to be a very good wide receiver for the Titans. There's a lot of upside there. But if Traylon Burks turns out to be someone that can replace A.J. Brown, I don't see a way the Jaguars are winning this game. They're going to continue the losing streak in Nashville the same way the Colts will continue the losing streak in Jacksonville. So they're on to Week 15. I think the season's all but wrapped up at this point unless they get crazy hot, finish the year 9-8. But after the Week 14 against the Titans, they will be 5-8, heading back to Jacksonville to face the Dallas Cowboys in a Week 15 matchup. Now, the Dallas Cowboys, you're honestly like your picture-perfect example of what a high-powered offense on paper looks like with a team that just cannot get it together on the field. It's a really weird thing. Aaron Rodgers has started to talk about how he just kind of carried Mike McCarthy to that Super Bowl. Obviously, those cracks are starting to shine through a little bit with Mike McCarthy in Dallas, but still, they're an offense that's probably going to be looking to make a playoff push this late in the year. And Jaguar fans, honestly, just put your hands up. Just put your hands up and enjoy this ride as the Jaguars continue to ride down the roller coaster that just looks like it's going into a pit of fire. And that's the only end for this Jaguar season, as it's just going to get bad. It's going to get ugly, just as ugly as it got during that horrible 4-game stretch. While it is an aging offensive line that the Cowboys have, it is one of the best in the league still without a doubt. And last year in 2021, it was the best ranked, it was the top ranked offensive line according to Pro Football Focus. So it's got that going for it. Yes, they've had some losses, Lyle Collins, players like that. But still, you're talking about a team that is going to be making a playoff push versus a team that's going to be looking at whether they're going to be drafting Kayshon Boutte or Jackson Smith and Jigba here in the 2023 draft. So the Cowboys come into Jacksonville and they leave with the win. The Jaguars fall to 5-9 as they're looking at traveling up to the Meadowlands to face the New York Jets. Now, Week 16 against the New York Jets, they're 5-9 as they head into this Week 16 matchup, and they're going to be going up against the darlings of the 2022 NFL Draft. You're talking about a team that made 3 first-round selections. They got Sauce Gardner, Garrett Wilson, and then jumped in very late to get pass rusher Jermaine Johnson. And they're 2 teams that are really going to be struggling to go from worst to first. Obviously, the Jaguars have an easier path to that. They don't have to go through a team like the Bills, who are one of the best teams in the National Football League. But I do think the Jaguars are going to get into a shootout here with the New York Jets, and this game is potentially going to come down to a late kick, a last-second kick, whoever it may be. Whoever emerges as the top Jaguars pass catcher will draw a lot of attention from Sauce Gardner. He's going to be touted as the man that never allowed a single touchdown catch in his entire time with the Cincinnati Bearcats. I think that's just an absurd stat, and it's a clear reason, one of the reasons why he went as high as he did in the 2022 draft. Ultimately, I think the Jaguars are going to, sneak out a win here, and it's just going to be like I said, a last-second kick. It's a battle of 2 teams struggling to stay out of the top 10 in the 2023 draft. So, last-second kick. I think the Jaguars are going to squeak one out here. Well, the 2022 Jaguars regular season is pretty much all but wrapped up unless something crazy happens towards the end of the year. They win out and they go 8-9 and they limp into the 7th wild card spot in a loaded AFC, which I think is incredibly unlikely. But still, Davis Mills, I think at this point in the year, will have kind of proven that he's going to be a franchise quarterback for the Texans on the back of Brandon Cooks. Dameon Pierce is going to be looking like a very good running back. And I just think they're going to split with the Texans here in Week 17. Dameon Pierce is going to start to look like an incredible running back. He's had an incredible preseason. I think I saw a stat where he was rushing for 7 yards a carry in the preseason. You're talking about a backfield that has Rex Burkhead as his really only real competition. Rex Burkhead was averaging, I think, like less than 3.5 yards per carry this preseason. So you're looking at just another guy that the Jaguars are going to have to worry about when you're talking about running backs in the AFC South. It's not only going to be Derrick Henry, who they've worried about for years now. Jonathan Taylor has emerged as another guy they have to worry about. You're also looking now at Dameon Pierce, who is just another great AFC South running back, where it's going to look like there might be, the big 4, Henry, Taylor, Pierce, and Etienne potentially. So, unfortunately, the Jaguars do fall to 6-10, and they're just limping into home against the Tennessee Titans for a Week 18 matchup. Obviously, the Titans are expected to be in the thick of the playoff hunt here, and they're going to absolutely need a win in Week 18 to keep pace with the rest of the loaded AFC, depending on if they're playing for a playoff spot, whether they're trying to, win the AFC South, competing with the Indianapolis Colts. Depending on where they are, they're absolutely going to need a win in Week 18, and I just think with the amount of stakes that the Titans are going to have stacked against them, they're going to need the win, and they're going to just come into Jacksonville, take care of business, kind of do what we expected the Indianapolis Colts to do last year in Week 18, just come in, take care of business, and get the hell out of here and make it to the playoffs. Do I think the Jaguars can kind of pull some magic out late? of course, but we're looking at a team that's going to be doubling their win total, even with a loss here in Week 18. If you finish the year 6-11, that shows an insane amount of progress. Obviously, you start the year white hot, and you go through the gauntlet of those 4 teams, and then you just kind of do still face some tough teams throughout the later part of the year. If the Jaguars, if they are in some kind of playoff contention here, whether they're at 8 wins, even if they're at 7 coming into this matchup, I think there's a chance the Jaguars might be playing for something here. But overall, I think the Jaguars are going to be out of playoff contention around Week 14, right after they finish just that horrible gauntlet of absurdity that they're going to have to go through, starting with, the Broncos game in Week 8. You're really just going to be looking at a bunch of absurdity in this later half of the season for this Jaguars offense with the talent they're going to be facing. So ultimately, I have the Jaguars finishing 6-11, missing the playoffs, and they're going to be probably picking around that 7-9 mark that we saw in 2020 when they took CJ Henderson with the 9th pick. I think it's going to be somewhere in that range. So let me know down in the comment section below, where do you guys have the Jaguars finishing in the 2022 regular season? Where do you guys have them picking in the 2023 NFL draft? I would love to have that conversation with you guys, so be sure to drop your comments down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Stay safe, and go Jaguars.
How about them Jags?
Come on, Joe! Ah! Thank you, baby! Thank you! You're making blood come from my damn mouth!
Duval! Yeah!